Hello, I'm Michael Dawson from Northern Brewer, and these are the non-traditional series beer kits, our limited edition kits for January, February, and March 2011. Let's get started palest to darkest, lowest gravity to high gravity. First up is the Farmhouse Biere the table. And if we are being nitpicky historically, this is not non-traditional. This is a traditional beer. This is a throwback, kind of ancestral style of the modern bière de garde. Modern deluxe bière de gardes, as they say in Pas de Calais, are very strong, lagered ales. And that's a pretty modern innovation. The originals, since they were farmhouse ales for farm workers, were a much more modest gravity. And our kit is about 4% ABV. It's got a really nice, unobstructed Pils malt character, very gentle hop bitterness, and restrained esters thanks to the Wyeast 3725 Bière de Garde yeast. Looking at it on paper, it's a lot like the Potter's beer, it's a lot like the Petite Saison, it's a lot like the Twisted Ankle limited edition kit from last summer, but it's not the same beer at all. The restrained esters from that yeast set it apart from the Potter's beer and the Twisted Ankle, and especially the Saisons. It's much more smooth and rounded. Think of it as kind of like a Belgianized cream ale. It finishes, thanks to the yeast, with a little bit of a tart finish, not unlike an American wheat beer or a fermentation with the 3711 French Saison yeast. If you like that yeast, if you like those other styles, this is a great kit for you. In the middle, we've got Oval Abbey Ale, or maybe pronounced a little more correctly, Oval. If you haven't guessed from the pronunciation or the kit description, this is a knockoff of Orval Trappist Ale, which is kind of a singularity among Trappist beers. If it's patterned after a commercial beer like that, how is it non-traditional? Well, it's not strong enough to be a double, and it's too dark to be a triple. It's very heavily hopped. It's even dry hopped, which is pretty unusual for Belgian beers. And it's got a mixed fermentation with ale yeast and Brettanomyces, which in the pantheon of Belgian beers isn't that unusual, but it's very unusual for a Trappist style ale. When it's young, most of the character in this beer is going to come from the malt and the hops, a little bit from the yeast, but it's a pretty subdued strain for a Belgian yeast. You'll get some fruit, some herbs, some earth from the Styrian Golding's dry hops, and the Belgian caramel malts that the recipe uses. As it ages, and this beer can age really well, some people swear by Orval at 2 years old, 3 years old, even 5 years old. As it ages, the body is going to lean out, it'll become much drier and snappier. That hop bitterness is going to be replaced by acidity from the Brettanomyces, and the hop flavor and aroma is going to be replaced by some earthy funk, also courtesy of the Brettanomyces. Will you drink it young and fresh? Will you age it like fine wine? That's up to you. Now, I really shouldn't editorialize, but I'm going to anyway. The last one is my personal favorite. We call it the Sustainor non-traditional Bock. It's got Munich malt and an original gravity of over 1060, and it's fermented with the Wyeast 2487 Hellerbach lager yeast from southern Bavaria. So far, so good. This sounds pretty traditional, but we use wheat and rye malt in the grist, and we use American hops. It's even dry hopped. The horror. What you get from this combination of ingredients, the Munich malt, the roasted and caramel wheat and rye malts, and the sterling hops, is a very complex pint without being exhausting to the palate. When I smell it, I get Toblerone orange, I get coffee with Bailey's Irish cream, I get dried herbs and wintergreen. The all-grain kit makes use of rye malt, so all-grain brewers will have a little bit enhanced wintergreen experience. I just like this a lot. It's kind of the best of two worlds. The hop rate, the bitterness, the aroma, the flavor profile of the hops is like an American IPA, but with the Sterling hops, which have this really sexy, herbal, spicy, candied citrus aroma, it speaks with a German accent, and it's got the malt intensity of a dark, strong German lager, and it's got the oomph of a dark, strong German lager to help shorten the long last days of winter. To really experience this kit like I'm describing it, you need to ferment it as a lager. But if you want to try this kit and don't have lager facilities, don't let that discourage you. You can get these same flavors and a lot of the experience with an alternate yeast. I would suggest Wyeast 1056 American Ale. A couple others you could try would be Wyeast 2112 California Lager Yeast, which will give you a little maltier beer, or White Labs 029, the German Ale, which will give you a drier finish and a little more hop character. I need a minute. That is the non-traditional series. Pick them up while they're around, because when they're gone, they are gone. Thanks for giving me the chance to describe them to you. I hope you enjoy them. Cheers.